Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This might come as a bit of a shock, but of course, we now know, of course, that we've all been duped by a documentary. And here we go with some of the evidence. Share this with you first of all. Now, this was shared with me way back in 2016 by Sheriff Robert Herman, who directed me to this this particular offering from the Stephen Avery is guilty Reddit post. There's more evidence that making a murder framed police than there is any evidence that police framed Avery. We were there simply to document events as they were unfolding. We were not there to judge. We were there to listen and witness. Laura Riccardi. In documenting the Avery case, MAM filmmakers Laura Riccardi and Moira Demos had a natural enough duty to portray the defense's strategy. And the defense's strategy was to forward the same notion defendant Stephen Avery himself had promoted to news outlets before his arrest, that the police had it out for him and planted evidence on his property to implicate him in the murder of Teresa Halbach. But did the filmmakers go above and beyond their duty? Did they, either consciously or without meaning to, actually put the fingers on the scale so that the planting defense would seem to bear more weight than it rightfully had? Did they go beyond being the mere witnesses to events they claim to have been and cross over into actually pushing an agenda? And let's go another step further, because this was another thing that was shared to me by Sheriff Herman. So let's pop this one up. I'll just, again, read a little bit of this, and then you can see why we're all daft and stupid to have been taken in by making a murderer. Now, this particular, I wouldn't use the word journalist. He thinks he's a journalist. He was described to me as a shrill, somebody who liked to be sensational, cause conversation. Apparently, I've got it from the words from the horse's mouth. He used to stand in front of the TV, the TV camera, and practice just saying, "This is Dan O'Donnell for such and such news," just trying to get it right. And he was just considered an absolute idiot. Anyway, let's hear what he has to say. Common Sense Central is edited by WISN's Dan O'Donnell. Dan provides unique conservative commentary, you can say that again, and analysis of stories that the mainstream media, well, we're concerned in one in particular: rebutting a murderer. Episode 1, experimentation. Let's see what Daniel O'Donnell has to say. Nearly 3 years ago, Making a Murderer was less a TV series than a force of nature, exposing systemic injustice in a murder trial in rural Wisconsin. It was also one of the most dishonest documentaries I've ever seen. I'm Dan O'Donnell, and I would know. I was a reporter who covered the trials of Stephen Avery and Brendan Dassey, and nearly 3 years ago, what I saw in that documentary shocked me. I knew the truth, and Making a Murderer wasn't showing it. Making a Murderer was showing the truth that the murderers wanted you to see. So nearly 3 years ago, I created a podcast to present the evidence that you didn't see, to rebut the murderer's case with one of my own. Before I got into journalism, I graduated from the University of Wisconsin Law School, so I used my training and my experience covering this story for more than a decade to tell the other side of the story, the one that Making a Murderer didn't. It's obviously, we hear this all the time. You've been duped by a documentary, as if it's some sort of Netflix conspiracy, in the same way that we point out that there is this conspiracy, that there was a conspiracy to frame Steve and Brendan. They try and turn it on us and say, no, we're the ones that are being duped by a conspiracy. And what would that motive be? Well, obviously, Netflix are interested in making money with a sensational documentary. But first of all, let's think about how many millions of people have been tricked, because literally, I think the last figure was well over 50 million people, and that was a few years back, have watched Making a Murderer, and all been duped. I've all been duped by it. And you have to ask the question, well, you know, if the documentary is so dishonest, why? What is their motive? What is the motive of Making a Murder? Is it to try and ensure that a convicted killer is exonerated? You might think, well, nobody would do that, but let's hold on a sec. Sean Reck, who of course we wait to hear when he will be releasing his documentary, I believe it's called Convicting a Murderer. It was being offered to various streaming platforms, etc., so that it could go on release. I haven't heard anything since. As I say, he did this documentary, Convicting a Murderer. We've seen clips of it. The other thing I get asked often is any news on Making a Murderer Series 3 coming out? And I certainly haven't heard anything about that. But let's have a look at Sean Reck's, one of his finest pieces of work, of course, was Murder in the Park, in which a professor protest, with the help of his students, managed to secure the release of Anthony Porter and the wrongful conviction of Alstory Simon. Their motive? Well, they were against the death penalty, and Anthony Porter was within hours of being executed. Rightly so, because he did actually do the murders, and Alstory Simon was the wrongfully convicted replacement. And it's a very, very interesting documentary, and you can understand why Sean Reck can point to that work of his and say, you know, I'm entitled to have a look at Making a Murder and see if there was any aspects of how it was put together that was tilted. But here's the problem for me: if it's a Netflix conspiracy to try and get a guilty person exonerated, Netflix have managed to trick. I'm going to list all the people they're going to, and you'll probably come up with plenty of your own. But obviously, Netflix have managed to deceive Jerry Buting and Dean Strand, because they are very concerned that Stephen Avery was wrongfully convicted. You've also got Laura Nyrider, who at the time was just an up-and-coming lawyer, just started. But you've got Steve Drizin, who is one of the experts on wrongful convictions of youth and false confessions. And although Stephen Drizin brings in lots of other experts to help him with this, it must be acknowledged Stephen Drizin is one of the leading experts in wrongful convictions. So those two were obviously duped to try and present this story that Brendan is innocent, when in fact he was the co-killer with Stephen Avery and did all the things listed in his confession. You've also got the most successful attorney in America in all time of ever releasing, getting wrongfully convicted people exonerated, Kathleen Zellner. How Netflix managed to pull the wool over her eyes, that is some achievement. As I say, you know, and not only that, but you've also got the Walt Kellys and the Steve Davies of the world. You've got, you know, your Bob Hennecks and all the other lawyers that have been involved. I don't know if I can list them all off the top of my head. And you've got to imagine as well that part of this conspiracy to get Steve and Brendan released, remember, is also to try and undermine local government in rural Wisconsin. That's one of the main aims, of course, here, all these people wake up every morning wondering how can they undermine local government in Manitowoc and Calumet. Not only that, how can we undermine law enforcement in those places, And then, of course, you look at the fact that, well, also part of this conspiracy to try and, make Stephen and Brendan look innocent, you've got, obviously, the family, and you've also got Bobby Dassey and Scott Tadek trying their damnedest to leave as many clues as they can to make themselves look dodgy, look guilty. This is also part of this conspiracy. You realize all the different elements that must come together for this duping to occur. And then you look at the fact that, you've got Ryan Hilligus, Scott Blodon, and Mike Holbach himself trying to look as suspicious and as dodgy as possible. And to top it all, you've got Calumet County Sheriff's Department and Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department trying their damnedest, ignoring conflicts of interest in order to try and make themselves look suspicious. So I ask you the question, have we really been duped by this documentary? Have Netflix really managed through Laura and Moira to dupe millions and millions of people across the world? Now, come on, look, if Dan O'Donnell says that we have been duped, and this Fred, whatever his name, on Reddit say that we've been duped, then we must have been duped. And everything that I've just listed there must have happened for us to have been duped. Your thoughts, as usual, always appreciated. Bye for now.